thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you here today for the first of a series of community charlas. We're going to begin with some introductory remarks. Welcome by Jackie Reyes. As many of you know, Jackie Reyes Yanez serves as the director of the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs.
Buenas tardes, good evening. And yes, my name is Jackie Reyes, and I'm here on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser. Un aplauso para ella y las mejores vibras. She's testifying as we speak on our city's budget. And good things for the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs. I think that, I was telling this to Jose, that thanks God to him in his guidance and and why this is important in the history of the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs. When I became the director, I got the office in $2.8 million. Y para la gloria de Dios, we are $4 million for this year. Yes, pueden aplaudir más fuerte si quieren. So it's glad to be here, and I see so many faces, so many history, and I hear all of the tales of the 70s. ¿Dónde están los latinos del 1970s? Raise your hand. 80s. 90s, 2000s, okay, y ahora, todos. We're still here, and I think that after 40 years, the Latino community is still strong, and I think we're in a good place, even though as the political climate, and people tell me, you know what, Jackie, and Jay, who's not here, he'll be like, you know what, Jackie, thanks God that we have a mayor that cares for the immigrant community, because if not, at least we have that un rayito de esperanza. We have the Immigration Justice Fund, we have spent $1 million since the election time when that person became the president. But now we're strong, and we give legal advice to Latinos, to immigrants. And Carlos Rosario has been a partner with us. So un aplauso también para Alison, que la tenemos acá, y a Carlos Rosario. That when we have the TPS, they're the first people that I call, because I worry a lot, of immigration coming to the city. But we have a mayor who's not a punk. Our mayor is strong and very bold, and she stands up and she says, not in Washington, D.C. We are the nation's capital, and we set as a blueprint. But now that we're here, we had a conversation with Allison about the history of the office. And it started as a conversation. Then now, and I like to tell people that I'm just like a hopeless dreamer, But all of these dreamers are coming to existence. We speak in existence, and we speak in hope in Washington, D.C., because we have a mayor that cares, and she speaks about D.C. values, that it doesn't matter how we look. It doesn't matter how we choose to love. In Washington, D.C., we believe in dignity and respect. And that's our values, that as a cabinet member, that we are an extension of the mayor. So having you here is a testament to that. All of these faces, new faces, people estaban los amiguitos estaban allá tomando a picture, and like the old guard, the new guard, all of the guards are here today. So that's also beautiful, right? So all of the guards, because guess what? We have a bigger issue that we have to be together, but knowing our history, that I believe in history, because we are not gonna let anything to repeat again. And the mayor's office on Latino Affairs goes in waves. Whoever is the mayor, it goes into estamos bien, we are strong budget, and then when we are, the budget is strong, we give programs and we can see the results. And what I have learned from my late council member Jim Graham is we gotta fight. This is not a time que vamos a estar aquí viéndonos las caras bien tranquilos. No, it's about being together. And I think that all of this we can see. And I have Carmen también, fue una directora para Office of Latino Affairs, who under her leadership, she went through the riots of Mount Pleasant. And I think that study that you guys did helped out. That it was born the language access in 2004. So we have good things that we can learn and we can build up. And having this charla and having this to come into existence, it will help us to be stronger for the Latino community, for all Latino community. Pero también I want to reemphasize that I take pride in the office, but I also take pride of being a Salvadorian. Yes. For the first time, aplauden. You know, they were telling some people, like, es que a Jackie le gusta el protagonismo. And I'm like, yeah, me gusta el protagonismo. Sí, me gusta el protagonismo. ¿Sabes por qué? Because I work hard. You know, I work hard. And for people who doesn't like el protagonismo, they shouldn't be in politics. They shouldn't be in politics. Because I take pride on being Salvadorian. And when I tell people, you know, at least people will say, una salvadoreña pasó por la alcaldía. We have the Monseñor Romero apartments that I work hard 8 years. We lost to a 5-alarm fire. 8 years later, those tenants came. And when we thought about naming Monseñor Romero apartments, it's because he was a civil fighter. You know, he was not yet un beato. So, and I said, no, it gotta be. We are the biggest community here. Why not? Why not? You know? So when I say, Jim used to tell me, you gotta take pride, Jackie. You gotta take pride. Do not let anybody, although you have an accent, so what? You know? Somebody me dijo, ay, es que esta Jackie no sabe hablar. So what? You know what? As long as I can take my message across, I will speak, because half of the people that are here are Salvadorian y no pueden hablar también. But guess what? With my broken English, I have gotten my office to $4 million. We have got the Immigration Justice Fund. Okay? I can speak to lawyers, you know, because I have been there. I have suffered. I have been homeless. I have been a teen mom. So all of my weakness have helped me to get services to my people that are going through the same thing. And when we talk to Jose, and we talked, I always will remember this. When I first became in politics in 2005, I was just a little girl, 25 years old. And Jose was one of the first persons who got me into this little restaurant on 11th Street. I will always remember this. And he has been like a mentor, right? And then Sonia, with Joshua Lopez, got me into her office because we were like crawling in the politics. And he said, like, you know what, Jackie? Nunca se me va a olvidar about Pedro Aviles. And he was like, you know what? You guys are the biggest community, but somehow you guys get scared. And I was like, okay. You know, it was like, and I didn't know anything this beautiful about politics. But when you get with people like Sonia and Jose, then we gotta learn that strength is gonna come in. Now, 12 years later, I run the office, the mayor's office on Latino Affairs. And it has been a challenge because a lot of people didn't believe that I could do it. And now, but I had a mayor who has stood by me. I had mentors like Jim Graham, who is not here. But I said, God, in these times that we're living, that our people are suffering, that we don't know what is gonna happen to the TPS recipients, we don't know what is gonna happen to the Dreamers, we don't know what is gonna happen to the DACA recipients, but at least we have people here in this room that we care about history, okay? And thank you, Jose, thank you, Sonia, because todavía estamos mientras tengamos un rayo de esperanza, we will have hope. And I don't want to take over, you know, I love to talk. Y puedo hablar toda la tarde si quiero. Pero I love having you here because this is what it meant. This is the taxpayers' money. You can use this room. We had the Colombian elections here, and people were like, what are you doing? I said, guess what? We have Colombians also here in the District of Columbia. They can use this place. Let them use Saturday, I don't care. We have 24/7 security. Let them use it. And then 2 times we have the Colombians here. So I tell people, if you want a room to use this space. It's your space. So, and the mayor opened up spaces to be safe, and safe spaces, the TPS people, I don't care. Come and use the spaces. That's what we are for. Así es que, gracias y quedan en su casa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jackie. Before we continue with our program, a cell phone reminder again. I also wanted to let you know that when you turn in that survey today, we have a little bundle of Carlos Rosario goodies for you, and it includes this fabulous book by Eric Liu, You're More Powerful Than You Think, A Citizen's Guide for Making Change Happen. So don't forget to turn in your surveys, please. Next, we have a wonderful opportunity to hear from another one of our leaders here, Alison Cocoros. As many of you know, Alison serves as the CEO of the Carlos Rosario International Public Charter School. She has served the school for the past 25 years in such roles as English teacher, fundraiser, and school principal. There are many, many more than those. 2 years ago, along with the Board of Trustees of Carlos Rosario, Alison led the school community in a planning process about the future of the school. As a result of this planning process, the school is expanding, and just in the past year, formed a small business and entrepreneurship program, a bilingual teacher training program, and a transitions program, which is resulting in an increase in Carlos Rosario graduates going on to higher education. Please help me welcome Alison Cocoros.
Thank you, Naomi. Gracias. Good afternoon. How is everyone? Great. Oh, I love the energy in this room. Well, I know we're all really ready to hear from our two speakers today, so I'm going to be very brief. I want to say, I think we're very, very fortunate to all be physically in this space together today and to hear from Sonia Gutierrez and Jose Gutierrez about the creation of MOLA, this institution that has impacted thousands and thousands of lives ever since it was created in 1974. Yes? 76. We'll be hearing more about that. That's what they'll be telling us. I have to say, as you heard from Naomi, I've been with the school for just a little while, for 25 years. And during that time, I've been blessed and fortunate to be by Sonia's side and to hear her telling the stories of the school, and especially of the 1970s. As we were reestablishing the school, as we were writing the charter school application to become the nation's first adult ed charter school, as we were then looking for a home and looking for a building to operate in, and then we were looking for funding to renovate that home, and then we were looking for a second building. All along the way, whenever we were dealing with these challenges, I would hear Sonia remembering these stories from the 1970s of creating institutions like the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs from nothing. And the tactics and the strategies and the coalition building that went into all of that. And so I've been blessed to be able to hear those stories along my journey with the Carlos Rosario School. And I have to say, very, very grateful to you, Jackie, and the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs for making this project, Nuestra Cuidad, possible, to highlight and lift up some of these stories, especially in the 1970s, and to record them and document them, because too many times we take for granted, I think it's human, we take for granted who went before us and what they accomplished. And this project is going against that and making sure that we take time to listen and to ask and to say, teach us, help us learn and help us be inspired, because I think we all know it's more important now than ever before that we know these stories, that we're inspired by these stories, that we're uplifted by these stories, and that we put them into our DNA to guide us in the way forward. So I'm just so pleased. Thank you again, Jackie and the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs, for making this possible. And thank you to Sonia and Jose Gutierrez for all of the time and effort you've put into this presentation. Gracias.
Thank you, Alison. I wanted to, before I introduce Sonia and Jose, I want to tell you some quick words about Nuestra Ciudad. The project, as you heard from Allison, is funded by the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs. Its main aim is to explore the development of the Latino community in DC during the 1970s, in particular, a pivotal decade in the evolution of our community here. Nuestra Cuidad has 3 key components: data gathering from oral history, interviews, and archival reviews to arrive at a timeline for this period in the community, delivery of community charlas like this one, and culminating events with Carlos Rosario's partners, the National Portrait Gallery during Hispanic Heritage Month this year. During the early stages of the project, we uncovered 4 key links, 4 interdependent elements that were at the core of the development of the Latino community here during the 1970s: collaboration, strategy development, innovation, and representation. Very, very, very key concepts. These are exemplified to the highest degree by both of our speakers today. Sonia Gutierrez, who is a recipient of numerous awards, including the American Dream Medallion in Education from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. She serves as both President Emeritus and founder of the Carlos Rosario International Public Charter School, and as President and Chief Executive of the Community Capital Corporation. Joining Sonia is, of course, Jose Gutierrez, a Latino organizer and activist known by his nickname, The Brain, given to him by Carlos Rosario himself for his consummate skills as a strategist. During the past 40 years, Jose has held many important positions, both in the district and the federal government, and was at one point the highest-ranking Latino government official in the district. Jose, like Sonia, is a past president of the Latino Festival, now known as Fiesta DC. Among Sonia's and Jose's many achievements was their work to create the Latino Community Development Act, passed into law on September 29, 1976, which led first, among many other achievements and possibilities and potentials and anything from job and housing and economic development in our community, to the founding of MOLA, the Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs itself today. Please give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
The making of the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs, and Sonia and I will exchange back and forth to kind of put the history of that time in perspective, and hopefully we will walk and learn at least 4 items. By the way, this is Gus Viteri, who is helping me with the IT, because in my generation, yellow pad and pen was the most complicated thing I worked with. But anyway, the charla today is going to focus on this framework here. We're going to talk about the events leading up to the Community Development Act and the founding of MOLA, the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs, community organizing and demonstrations. We're going to talk about what that was, what tactics we use, and hopefully what lessons learned so that you begin to look at how you might apply them today. We're going to talk about the role of civic education in social change. We're going to talk about the times during the 70s, the period of 1966 or 67 and 77, and the outcomes of the Latino Community Development Act. So let's talk a little bit about the broader context. 1966, 1976. In the United States, it was a time of the Civil Rights Movement. So in the Southwest, you had El Movimiento, which was the movement of the Chicanos from California, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, and how they organized for change. You had the United Farm Workers, also in the Southwest, who began to organize around the issue of reasonable pay for an honest day's work, the amount of hours worked, and fair housing. In the Northeast, we had a variety of groups in the Latino community. In the African American community, you had the Black Panther Party. You had groups like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Council. You had groups in New York like CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. You had groups of Puerto Rican activist students. I'm a first-generation college attendee from New York, and I spent the first 3 years of my life in college at Columbia University, although Columbia University would probably tell you he spent a great deal of time organizing protests. But that was the nature of the events back then. I was a member of the Puerto Rican Student Union. We worked with groups like the Young Lords on the takeover of the church at 111th Street, the garbage demonstrations where we blocked streets in New York and dumped garbage on the streets. We were actively involved, as Oliver Wendell Holmes said, in the actions and passions of our time. In the Latin American community, in Latin America, you also had the struggle occurring in many, many countries, from Nicaragua, El Salvador, Colombia. You had revolutionary groups on the far left, whether you consider them extreme or not, they actively sought social change. There was a Christian movement. Some now call it liberation theology. But there was a heavy Christian movement that started from South America. For those of you interested, you can look up Gustavo Gutierrez. I'm not pushing him because he carries my last name, but he was a Peruvian priest, heavily involved in that theology. That theology spread among Christians, both in the Catholic Church and the other denominations across the United States. So what is that? Well, basically, if you take the politics out of it, prior to that time, you had in the church, where we all went on Sundays, a reading of the gospel, a sharing of concerns, and a wish that tomorrow would be better. Mañana Dios proveerá. But then a group of Christians get in and said, you know what? If you're really a Christian, if you really believe in the Word, it has to be alive. It has to be involved. It has to be, how can you be a Christian and accept discrimination? Powerful. For all of us. For me, as a young Puerto Rican in New York, as a student at Columbia University, it was about how can I accept colonialism in my country? Why should we be a colony? Now, some people would say, well, that's far left. Well, but remember the time. We're talking about late 60s, early 70s. You could not be a young Latino male, right, Hector, without, in effect, being revolutionary. So let's move on. Now that you know the contents of what's happening, before we talk about Latinos in the 70s here, let's talk about what was happening in D.C. Before 1974, D.C. was a federal agency. The employees, they may have called themselves mayor, commissioner, city council member. They were federal employees appointed by the president in power, whether it be Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon. I'm not going to talk about any time before Lyndon Johnson because then I'll date myself. But there was a movement in D.C., the Home Rule movement, which was led by civil rights activists. Civil rights activists not only from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Council, but the traditional civil rights movement that you would find people like Reverend Abernathy, and Bill Lucey, and a bunch of others that we can talk about. It was not until after the passage of the Home Rule Act in 1974 that you had the opportunity to have the first elected DC local city government, an elected mayor and elected council. That's important because as you begin to look at social change and how do you affect social change, you begin to understand that a bureaucrat, someone who's a government employee, doesn't really care whether or not he's delivered the service necessarily, because that's just a job. And what you say or do as a community is not going to affect whether or not I get the paycheck or not. But if you are an elected official, dependent upon the vote of the public, dependent upon the fundraising that happens in the community, you're going to care. The group that got elected in 1975 was the group that we were focusing on as we began to look at what to do. So let's go back and talk about the profile. Basically, where did we come from? We came from the Caribbean, Mexico, Central and South America. That was the population here. We were, the reasons for our migration, we were escaping civil war, poverty. We were all seeking a better life. Whether you came from Illinois, Ohio, California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, whether you came from Colombia, Nicaragua, Peru, El Salvador, you were all looking for a better life. And you came where? La capital. Right?
Right.
Because that's all, I mean, basically you go to the capital for what? You go there for opportunity. There's got to be, if there's no place else in a country where there's opportunity, you got to find something in la capital. What jobs did we have? Well, let's talk about where we were mostly. We were mostly in wards 1, 2, 3, and 4. We were Northwest Washington was the anchor. And the jobs that we were primarily in were in the service industry, whether it be hospitality, restaurants, food service, construction, infrastructure work. You'll find us, digging holes, doing ditches, street repair. I see Perdomo Construction here. He knows what I'm talking about. I mean, we are basically where the tire hits the road, right? You're doing the labor. You're doing the hard work. You're doing that work that says you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You got to get something to eat, and you got to show up and do a hard day of work. Next slide. The events leading up to the creation of MOLA. I'm going to now turn to Sonia, who will walk you through the specifics and the people who were involved.
Hello. It is so good to see so many faces from the past, like Tony and Hector and so many others. And I am so happy that Vilma Rosario, Carlos Rosario's daughter, has joined us today, because we go way back. Vilma, get up so they can see you. I want you to know also that Vilma now forms part of the Carlos Rosario board, Charter School board. So anyhow, what happened? One day in 1975, I was running PELA. PELA was a program of English instruction for Latin Americans created by Carlos Rosario. Carlos Rosario was my mentor and more like a father to me, honestly. He mentored me. He was the one that taught me how to love the Latino community, because even though he's Puerto Rican like me, he had this tremendous love for immigrants and Latinos. And when I first met him in '72, he started talking to me about immigrants. I'm a middle-class girl from Puerto Rico. What did I know about immigrants? And I had lived here only like 2 years. So I got interested in immigrants, and he asked me to join him at PELA. Well, he never worked at PELA, but to go to PELA to do counseling. I said, I'm not a counselor. My degree is in business and all. And he says, believe me, you can counsel these people. Believe me, you can. And you know what? I could. But what happened to me was that the first time I met the immigrants in my school in PELA, I fell in love with them till today. I'm still in love with them. And yes. And to be totally honest, besides my kids and my grandkids, immigrants are my life. You are my life. You are my life. And you're very welcome. And so, through Carlos Rosario, I learned to love the community. And he used to always tell me, Nena, because he used to call me Nena. And Vilma, his daughter, used to get jealous because she said, why do you call her Nena? I'm your Nena. But he always cried, Vilma. He always called me Nena. So he says, Sonia, never, even ask a Latino where he's from. It doesn't matter where a Latino comes from. What matters is that they're Latino and we're here to help them. And that was ingrained in my mind forever, that I don't care if you're Salvadorian, Nicaraguan, I don't care where you come from. You're a Latino and we're here to help you. So Rosario had established the Office of Spanish. Rosario had a small group of people in the community that we work with him every day. And it was a group of about 5 or 6 people, mainly Marina Felix, Pedro Luján, Marcela Dávila, Casilda Luna, Ángel Luis Irene. That group at that time, we were the ones that were always meeting to see what's happening in the community, what can we do. And let me tell you, it was incredible because we all had established, Rosario helped establish a lot of the agencies that still are alive today. And I could tell you about every agency and how they were born, but that's not gonna be in this meeting. This will be in another meeting. But I'm telling you, I was at Pela, and when I started in '72, there were only 100 students. In my 42 years working at Pela, because I retired 3 years ago from Carlos Rosario, we've trained 75,000 people. And now Allison took over 3 years ago, and she's training thousands of people too. Because I have to very proudly say that according to the U.S. Department of Education run by this lady, Dubois, whatever her name is, our school has been selected as the top adult education school in the nation. How about that, guys? But our school has always been a school of excellence. You know, when I took Pela in the 70s, it was a small program, and I worked with a lot of people, like mainly Pepe Lujan, who's like my brother. And we converted that program into a school. And then we went to Gordon Center, and there we trained thousands till in '96. Because of budget cuts, they closed our school after 25 years. And then I said, I'm going to start it all over again, and everybody said I was crazy. Well, go and enjoy my craziness. Go and Harbor and Sonia Gutierrez and enjoy my craziness. I always say that because it really pissed me off that they told me I was crazy. So anyhow, what te gustó eso, Jackie? What happened was that one day, I think it was, I don't remember if it was spring or summer of '75, right? Rosario called me, and he says, Nena, guess what? Yo dije, ¿qué pasó, viejo? Oh, by the way, el apodo de viejo se lo puse yo a él, y el apodo de Brain se lo puso él a José. Teníamos todos apodos, yo era Nena. So anyhow, Rosario called me and said, I just received a letter from Joseph Yeldell. Joseph Yeldell was the director of the Department of Human Services, and Rosario's office was under Yeldell. Okay? And Yeldell sent him a letter telling him that he was closing the office, mira que pantalones, and that he was sending Rosario to the Office of Aging, and then he was sending Bill Smith and Pura, who worked with him. There were 3 people working in that office, and she was sending them somewhere else. I said, what? Is he crazy? And he says, well, that's what I got here. So he says, why don't you call the Brain? And he used to call Jose the Brain. I said, okay, I'll call Jose. So I called Jose, and I said, Jose, Rosario just got this letter. They're going to dismantle the office. And Rosario told me, like hell they are. And I said, right. So he said to me, why don't you get a group of people to the Muncie building. The Muncie building was where Rosario has the office. And you know where the Marriott Hotel is now on Pennsylvania Avenue? That was the Muncie building before they destroyed it and became a Marriott. That's where Rosario had the office. So I called a group of people, and Jose said to me, make sure you call Blas Padrino. Blas Padrino was a lawyer in our Latino community, and he was very well known by all of us. He was active in that time. So I said, why do we need a lawyer? Well, anyhow, little did I know what Jose had in mind. So we went to the office, and I called Marcelo Fernandez, Marina Felix, Luis Humberto Vidaña, Blas Padrino, Casilda Luna, and Marcela Davila. So we were there. So we're talking about a lot of these people passed away already. There are only like 2 or 3 of us left. So we started talking about it and what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And Jose says, we're not going anywhere with this. What we need to do is walk across the ¿cómo se llama? Right, across the street to the district building and demand that the mayor talks to us. Now, this is 1975. Remember, I just came in here in 69. I was, ay, Dios mío, si me ve papi. Anyhow, yeah, I was terrified. I was terrified at that time. So, yeah, ay, mi madre. So, but Jose and Marcelo Fernandez were like nothing because Marcelo Fernandez had come from Cuba y él era un revolucionario igual que este. Yo no, yo era la nena buena. But I didn't stay nena buena for very long. No, you mess with me and you're in deep trouble. So anyhow, it's true. Ask Alison, she'll tell you, right, Alison? So, hi, Patricia. So anyhow, we went there, and we brought Blas Padrino with us, our lawyer. Then I realized why Jose wanted Blas Padrino. And he told Blas Padrino, I remember it like if it was yesterday. Jose told Blas, listen, Blas, this is an act of civil disobedience, right? And I didn't even know what that was. So he says, so if they arrest us, you are to bail us out. Yo dije, ay, mi madre, qué lío nos hemos metido. So we went upstairs. He was in the 5th floor, the mayor. And so Marcelo and Jose were the ones in front. In the back was Casilda Luna, Marcela Dávila, myself, como niñitas más buenas. And he said, so they demanded seeing the mayor. And the police says, you cannot see the mayor. Why can't we see him? Because he's busy. So Jose and Marcelo told him, so we're going to stay here till he comes out. So Marcelo and Jose told us, sit down and start singing We Shall Overcome. Ay, Dios mío. We sat down, and the police is all around us, surrounding us, and of course, Blas was there in case. And we started singing, We Shall Overcome. And imagine, this is 1974, 75. African Americans are coming out of the civil rights movement, and we there sit on the floor of the mayor's office singing We Shall Overcome. They were so angry. They were surrounding us like they wanted to kill us, but Blas had instructions. If we're arrested, you bail us out. So the mayor came out. Oh, my God, he was furious. He was really furious because Mayor Washington hated us. Oh, he didn't like us at all. So he said, what the heck are you doing here, blah, 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 blah. So Jose and Marcelo were the 2 spokespersons. And Jose told him, because he says, we want to meet with you about the Office of Spanish-Speaking Affairs, blah, 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 blah. And the mayor says, well, you know, I cannot meet with you, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. And Jose told him, you are the Governor Wallace of D.C. Imagine calling him the Governor Wallace of, that's a big insult. And Marcelo said another insult, whatever. So anyhow, the mayor knew that we were sitting. Oh, I remember Marcelo telling Casilda Luna, Casilda, make believe that you fainted and start screaming. And, ay, Dios mío. I swear to God, yo dije, de la cárcel no nos salva nadie. Yo, ay, Dios mío, papi me mata. So anyhow, the mayor agreed to see us on Friday. This was Tuesday or Wednesday, right, Jose? So after it was over, we all went back, and I think that that's when you and Hector came in the picture then, and you wrote a bill of particulars, right? Can you tell them what the bill of particulars was? That took us nowhere. Took us nowhere.
As Sonia says, this bill of particulars took us nowhere. Well, I mean, basically, it's nothing more than a series of demands that you as a community are making of the person who is supposed to be the mayor of the city. Now, keep in mind that this is happening before Walter Washington announces that he's going to be the first candidate for the elected position of mayor.
Right.
He's still a government employee. He's just a federal employee. But let me also say that that was not my first run-in with Walter Washington. If you had come from New York like I had, you had run into a Walter Washington as the head of the housing authority in New York City. And if you are from New York, you know how discriminatory housing was in terms of black and Latinos in New York City under the leadership of Walter Washington.
Goes round and round and round. So anyhow, when Friday came, we all went back to our offices because let me tell you, we all had jobs, so so after this meeting, I ran to Pela to keep on running Pela, and everybody went back to their jobs. So then I called Pepe Lujan, who used to work with me. Let me tell you, Pedro Lujan from Peru was was hired by Rosario to be at Pela with Marcelo. Marcelo Fernandez was the first director of Pela. Marcelo then went to establish the bilingual program in this city. And Pedro Lujan was working at Change Incorporated, and Rosario recruited him to provide services to our students. In fact, the Department of Supportive Services that is today, after 40-some years, still at Carlos Rosario, was established by Pedro Lujan. Pedro Lujan in the 70s, let me tell you, in the 70s, there was not a better community organizer than Pedro Lujan. He was incredible. He was. And I love him. He's like my brother. He's not here because he's not well, okay? But anyhow, Pedro Lujan, I said, Pepe, you need to have a crowd of people in front of the district building while we discuss with the mayor these things. The people that went to, there were 5 of us that went to discuss this with the mayor. It was Jose Gutierrez, Marcelo Fernandez, Marcela Davila, myself, and there was this woman, she was a Puerto Rican, Carmen, she passed away, that used to work at Gil Chavez's office in HEW. ¿Tú no te acuerdas de esa señora? Carmen algo se llamaba ella. Ella se murió. Como todo el mundo se murió. Un peligro estar vivo. So anyhow, te digo que nosotros estamos ahí hanging in there, José. Tú también, Héctor, tú caes ahí también. So anyhow, fuimos, escuchen lo que pasó. Oh my God. Listen what happened. So the 5 of us go there to see the mayor. And the first thing, Marcelo used to smoke. That's why he died of lung cancer. He did. Marcelo, I love that man. He was so good to me. He helped me so much with my school. Oh, he was really a tremendous guy. But anyhow, he immediately took out a cigarette. You remember? So Julius, ¿cómo se llamaba el asistente del antipático aquel? He had an assistant that hated us even more. Julian Dugas. ¿Te acuerdas, Héctor? City administrator. And he tells Marcelo, put out that cigarette. And estamos nosotros 5 así con unas ganas de entrarnos a golpe con el alcalde. Y el alcalde le dijo, no, Julian, let him smoke. Porque allí que no se podía smoke, mira qué desgracia. Entonces, ¿qué pasó? We started talking to the mayor, blah, blah, blah. The 5 of us were in there talking to the mayor. Pepe Lujan he called Alfredo Neiro at SET Center. And him and Alfredo Neira got over 350 people in less than 2 days in front of the district building, and they were there demonstrating while we were talking to the mayor. Yes. That was to put pressure.
El Centro Católico.
Ah, el Centro Católico también, que estaba Rutilio Riego. Yo no sé si había llegado Padre Sean O'Malley. So anyhow, con ese escándalo allí, imagínense. I mean, it was really, really bad. So the mayor was a little nervous, blah, blah, blah. Marion Barry was a council member at that time. I knew him from the Board of Education when he was president of the Board of Education. And Jose knew him from New York, right? Marion and Jose went way back. So Marion heard about it. He walks into the office and he sits on the sill of the window and he starts listening to it. After we finished talking to the mayor, he says, I'll get back to you, blah, 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 promises, promises. While Pepe Luján had ese escándalo allá abajo, the media all over, oh my God. So anyhow, we all went back to our jobs, because remember, we had jobs, right? We went back to Pela. I went back to Pela. Jose goes back to La Causa Común. That was his job. He was director of La Causa Común in D.C. And he calls me, and he says, Sonia, Marion called me. I said, and? He says, he told me you're going nowhere with this. You're going nowhere with this. He says, you guys have to write legislation and get this office to be under the mayor's office and the director to be a cabinet member. And I said, oh, we're in deep trouble because we don't know how to write legislation. And Jose said, yes, but I know. And then also Hector knew. So I said, okay. So he says, so at that time, all the meetings were at my home because my first husband had left me because of the school. This is history, it's true, right, Alison? Me dejó el primero y me dejó el segundo por la escuela. So anyhow, what can I tell you? That's it. That's my story. I'm writing my book, so you'll hear it. Sí, me dijo. Él también. Sit down there. No, ven para acá que you're next. La escuela me ha costado a mí mucho. Pero I'm not sorry. I love my school. Anyhow, so Jose says, okay, let's go to your house. Y como yo estaba solo en mi casa with my two kids, I said, everybody to my house. So then Jose came, Hector Rodriguez came, Marina Felix. I remember Ángel Luis Irene came, and I had come from Puerto Rico con un bacalao de Puerto Rico, okay, porque como que aquí no había bacalao. So I brought it from Puerto Rico. And Ángel Luis says, Sonia, can I prepare this while you're all talking? Because he was not like that interested. So he was in the kitchen preparing bacalao while we started talking about what the legislation should look like. And then Jose will talk more about that part, but then what we did, the procedures we follow was that I remember Jose, Hector, Marcelo working on writing, right, Jose? And like Marina and I, he gave us like a little job to do. You deal with, I don't even remember in the legislation, pero era nada. They were the important guys, you know. And then what we would do was we would call the entire group and we would share with them what has been written. Yo era la secretaria, okay? Yo era la que cogía nota. I have the notes, and you know, se las di a Ángel Luis Irene, and I don't know, they probably disappeared. But I was the one, yo era la escritora, yo era la que escribía. Entonces, we would share it with the group would give us feedback, and then we would go back and start rewriting or adjusting the legislation, blah, 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 blah. So then, the last time we had when we were done and the whole group was satisfied with what we wrote, then we had a big community meeting at the old Wilson Center, donde estaba Reverendo Welty. The old timers remember Reverendo Welty. And we had a big meeting there with the community, and we share. There were like 75 people there. We shared the legislation with the community. In the meantime, Jose had asked Marcelo Fernandez to make sure that all there was always a big influence of all the religious, de los religiosos in our community. So Marcelo talked to Jose Somoza, Padre Jose Somoza, you remember him, to make sure he was on board, to Sean O'Malley, who was already at El Centro Católico. We also had Padre Bazán, we had, ¿quién más? Reverendo Welty, Padre Bazán, Sean O'Malley, Rutilio Riego, Reverendo Juarbe, Sister Marianne Justiz. Oh, by the way, Sister Marianne Justiz was part of the group too. So anyhow, when we were ready, we called a meeting. In the 70s, everything was done en traje largo, que yo era tremendo, todo de traje largo. So if you see this picture, what we did is we did a reception at the house of a friend of ours, era una americana, Sally Longi, really nice lady. In fact, we were at her house a couple of times writing legislation. And here you'll see the picture where we have already the legislation. We're presenting it to the city council, the ones that went to the party. Oh, by the way, in those times, all these parties, all these gatherings, all the bosses that were hired, all that came out from our pockets, and not from our agencias, because our agencias estaban peladas, no tenían dinero. It came from us. No, and we couldn't use that money. It came from our own pockets. So we did this party, and I assumed Jose was going to present the legislation. He says, no, Sonia, you present it. So you see me there, una niñita, because that was 42 years ago, okay? That's me, that's Jose behind me. And here you'll see Marion Barry, Doug Moore, you'll see Hector's face right here. You see Sally Longi and Ben Seagal from the mayor's office there. And we had a big party, right? And I turned over the bill. Marion Barry took the bill, and he went back to the city council, and he asked John Wilson, who was a very good friend of ours, he very, very dear friend, and he passed away also, and Polly Shackleton passed away also, the three of them to introduce it. The bill was introduced, and it went to Arrington Dixon's committee. Arrington Dixon, who was married to Sharon Pratt Kelly, who was mayor also in the city, mayor later on. And they introduced it, and of course, when they introduced it, we have to take all the people from Pela. By then, I had about 300 students. We had to take all the people from Pela, all the people from the Catholic Center, all the students from SET Center, all of them, to fill the city council. The bill was sent to committee por unanimidad, unanimously. It went to committee. It went to Arrington Dixon's committee. Arrington Dixon was the chair of the Government Operations Committee. Ay, María, qué memoria. Government Operations Committee. No estoy tan vieja, ¿verdad? And at that committee, we were working with Bruce Johnson. I remember distinctly. Bruce French.
Bruce Commonly French.
Right. I remember Jose and Hector, and I would sit there with Jose and Hector, y yo la que tomo nota, la secretaria, you know. So anyhow, and they were.
It was the 70s, folks. Ahora soy yo el que tomo nota.
So Hector and Jose were back and forth with, and he was a pretty nice guy, right? And then after he gave us suggestions, I would write them up. I would go back to them, and then if you want to add to that,
All right.
okay, add to that, and then when it finally went to the.
All right, so as you can see, thank you, Sonia. All right, so the movie is going to be titled Esto empezó con bacalao con arroz. No era arroz blanco.
No,
But anyway.
Ángel Luis un bacalao muy bueno.
Yeah, he did. The best cook in the community, as Hector probably remembers.
At that time was
I mean, the
Ángel
guy
Luis.
who would feed a whole bunch of those of us without any money was Angel Luis Irene. But anyway, so Sonia has told you about Marion Barry, and let's put into context. She told you about how she met Marion Barry. I told you that at Columbia University I was part of the Puerto Rican Student Union, and as part of that, a lot of us went to activities during the course of that. For example, I did an internship at the National Urban League, and we went through student-related activity. Among the student-related activities was this thing called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Council, SNCC. SNCC was membership included Marion Barry, included Ivan Holt Donaldson. John Wilson was at a thing called the Sharecroppers Fund, which was basically African-American farmers in the South who were sharecroppers, who didn't own the land, worked the land, produced whatever the land was able to produce, and then had to pay the landlord what many of us consider to be unreasonable fees. But anyway, as Sonia tells you, Marion, and she's, we're all looking at young people here. I don't know if this thing works, but anyway, this is Marion back then. This was John Wilson back then. Oh my God, all of us had hair.
Doug Moore, Dave Clark,
These two, together with
Polly.
Polly was an interesting woman. Polly had come to Washington
Really nice lady.
from basically in the Adlai Stevenson campaign. She was an artist.
Gutierrez.
She was an artist and a progressive, and very much supportive of civil rights and equality. This was the federal employee who later becomes mayor of the District of Columbia, Walter Washington. This is Sterling Tucker, who was the chairman of the elected city council, but he had also been appointed by the president under the appointment form of government. These gentlemen were traditionalists. Let's not rock the boat. Things will get better. Mañana is another day. Pray. Life will be good. Jim Coates and I, this trio, by the way, it's interesting. Jim Coates was from Ward 8. Jim Coates is a reverend, a minister, also a progressive, also very much into liberation theology. So this was the council member in Ward 1, Dave Clark. Dave Clark basically took the position that he will support when he sees that everybody else is supporting. I said, okay, I can buy that. This was Arrington Dixon, who supported the bill. Bill Spaulding, who later becomes the chairman of the committee with oversight over the agencies that I ran. Much later, I became the director of personnel for DC government, and after that, I became director of the Department of Administrative Services, which is general services that basically controlled the assignment of space for DC government agencies.
Tell them how you assigned the space to Ola.
I assigned the space to Ola, and if you look at the Ola space, actually, in government you use a formula, 375 square feet times the number of employees in your agency, plus a conference room of no more than, I think it was like 400 square feet, equals your office. If you walk through Ola, you'll see a lot more space, and that's because I said that they were going to have student interns, one in health and one in legal services and one in education. Me inventé, paquetón de interns. I said they needed a community room for meetings with the commission because they had a commission and the commissioners needed to meet and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the then director, I said, pick the space that you want in the building. Yeah, and she picked the one with the atrium, and you guys got a beautiful space there. It's fantastic. Anyway, so this was my pleasure. My pleasure. Some of the things that I did still happen. A funny story, a funny aside. Many, many years later, I come back to DC government because I retired from DC government as the deputy director of 911. You know, when you guys call for police and fire, I used to run that operation on a day-to-day. Now they call them what, COOs? Is that what they call them now? Right, Chief Operating Officers, but unified communications. So I had an employee come to me and say, well, you know, under the personnel rules, the agency is going to have to close because of snow. And I'm sitting there, and this employee shares with me the district personnel manual order that lays out how the procedure is to be, what procedure is to be followed and how. At the end of the third page of this order is signed by Jose Gutierrez, Director of Personnel. And the guy is talking to me. He doesn't connect that I'm the same Jose Gutierrez, right? I said, oh, that's an interesting, wonderful. You know, the guy who wrote that was really smart. You know that, right?
The brain.
But anyway, this was the council that we were dealing with. Keep in mind, this is the first elected city council, right? This is 1975, 76. The legislation, if you go back to the legislation, although the community had a lot of input, and there were a lot of events to involve people, and in the process of educating the community and also extracting from the community what they wanted. And that's important for you to remember. You want to give people in the community maximum feasible participation. If people don't have a buy-in, if I'm not part of the solution, then I'm not all that interested in figuring out what you do with it.
Yeah.
But the fact is that a lot of ideas I took from there, but I took ideas from elsewhere. Marion would call me every time that Bruce Comley French would finalize a draft based on what we submitted to him. He would call me, if not him, his secretary, and she would say, Jose, we have a draft for you to review. What time are you coming over? Bruce Comley, who was from Ohio, finally figured out that was happening, and he said, you know, where are you in the building? And I said, well, I'm in Council Member Barry's office. He says, well, you know, why don't I just come up and we can just, you know, instead of you sending it to me or giving it back to the council member and they give it to me and then we sit down, why don't we just cut through all this and sit down and work it out? This legislation has essentially four important features. One is the creation of the community participation element, which is the commission. Why is the commission important? It's important for two reasons. One, it is an entity that can hold hearings in the community and actually generate input. It also gives the director cover. You don't want a director meeting with the mayor all the time and saying, people are saying, right? You want the director to be able to say, my commission held a hearing on housing for the poor, and they're saying they're being displaced and they're not being given the opportunity to buy the place or whatever the issue is. So that's why the commission was important. Two, we wanted an office that was permanently part of the mayor's organization. And we wanted the person running that office to be part of the mayor's cabinet. Why? Because when you sit at the table as equals with the Director of Employment Services, the Director of Human Services, the police chief, and the fire chief, there's a certain respect and understanding of roles and relationships. You don't want your Director of Latino Affairs to be a subservient, you know, employee of some cabinet member somewhere. The other important element of this thing was we wanted the Office of Latino, and this is probably, in my view, the most significant part of what OLA can do or does. You wanted this is one of few agencies in DC government that have the authority to give grants. I mean, they're not a whole bunch of agencies, and the Office of Unified Communication does not have the authority to give you a grant, right? But few agencies in this DC government can actually put out a solicitation, give you a grant, and help out whatever the theme or issue is that they were working through. The other thing that we created was coordinators of Latino Affairs in agencies of DC government that have 500 employees or more. And that allowed someone like me, who then in 1980, January the 14th, came in. I came in January 2nd when Marion Barry, I was one of his general assistants for about a few days. And then I became the acting director of personnel for the District of Columbia. And when you had positions like coordinator of Latino Affairs, it meant that you can basically get people like Roland Robach, for example, over Human Services and graduate them up to the role of coordinator. It also meant that you could put a coordinator in the police department. You could basically get people in place to begin to understand what was going on in those agencies and affect change in those agencies. So, mass demonstrations grounded in civil rights, liberation theology, right? You notice that Sonia says, look, Centro Católico. She mentioned los reverendo, the ministers, y las monjitas, right? Is that what they call them?
Sister Miriam, sí.
See that? That's New York Spanish. So you get them involved. Why? Because through them, you get the church, and through them, you get the people who attend Mass, so that the student, who may be the adult at Catholic Center or SED or back then Pela, Carlos Rosario, when they go home and they talk about the need to demonstrate in front of the Wilson Building to get a fair share of the public housing money going to Latinos so Latinos have decent, affordable housing, that in that conversation, that wife can have that husband can say, yeah, the minister mentioned that in church. The father said something about that. The student, the child or the teenager can say, you know what, I heard about that, and in Sunday school or whatever. In other words, there's a way to spread the word. Marion, we talked about John Wilson. John Wilson and I did consulting work for John Wilson. I did consulting work for a whole bunch of people. I guess I was a proverbial consultant back then. But John Wilson and I, more than before the election process, we were friends. I'm talking about lunch, dinner, hang out, let's go have a drink, let's hang out at whatever bar we were going to or whatever. So you build a personal relationship with people. They now are occupying positions of power in the government. It's important for all of you to build relationships outside of your immediate community. Mm-hmm. If you just sit back and talk among each other's, Latino to Latino, African American to African American, Moroccan to Moroccan, how do you expect other people to understand your perspective, your point of view, and what you're all about? Reach out. Involve people. The more you do that, the more you become part of the fabric of the community. All right, so some of the ideas. Those of us who write proposals are used to doing research. Back then, there was no internet. You couldn't Google it. You actually had to go to a library. It was a pain. I told somebody, if I had internet back then while I was going to college, man, I'd have maybe 5 PhDs by now. You know what I mean? Because the toughest part of actually completing a course was doing the research to write the thesis paper, right, with all the citations. I mean, that was for those. How many of you guys did that? Wasn't that painful experience? Painful, painful. How many of you are Google fanatics? Go get your doctorates, man. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about La Causa Común. La Causa Común was a group of former clubhouse members. We were former gang members who basically who began to put our energies into social action, social change. And many of us were in schools like Columbia University. Angelo Giordani, for example, in New York, was at Harvard. Willie Vasquez went to Lincoln College, Con Edison, in New York. And a lot of us who had done that neighborhood battle stuff had graduated into social action and then graduated on into going to college, and many of us throughout college were also involved in stuff. So at Columbia University, as a student, I was involved in various mass demonstrations and various activities on campus. The last major activity that I was involved in was basically doing a Grito de Lares. For those of you who are from the Caribbean, Grito de Lares is an independence, a day of independence that's widely recognized. During that time, the United Nations was holding hearings on colonialization. And I and a group of the Young Lords, we organized this major conference at the university, bus people in and basically, did the whole street demonstration and et cetera. I share that with you to say I was familiar with street action. I was familiar with organizing techniques. I was familiar with the need to have a lawyer present because you need to be able to be bailed out. But anyway, as part of the research, Lyndon Johnson had a memorandum, a presidential memorandum, 259. Those of you who are interested can look it up. It established the Interagency Committee on Mexican-American Affairs. If you read that and you read the OLA bill, you're going to see some similarities. You're going to see basically cabinet members. If you read the commission, you'll see cabinet members who are supposed to be ad hoc members of the commission. You'll see the director of housing. You'll see a couple of there, right? You'll begin to see that. But if you track this, you'll begin to see the same thing at the federal level, right? So you begin to kind of draw the relationships there. If you look at this one here, the statement on signing the bill establishing the cabinet committee, I had the original bill, and my friend Henry Ramirez, Mexican-American, highest ranking Mexican-American to serve in back then in the Civil Rights Commission, Republican, California, Whittier, California, buddies of Richard Nixon. What's interesting about DC, I've always maintained this, you're only 4 or 5 people at most of the time. I wouldn't say that about Donald Trump, but in DC, you're usually more than 4 or 5 people removed from someone who knows the president, right? So he was very helpful to me because he gave me the legislation, the legislative history associated with this thing. Now, why is that important? Remember, I'm working with Bruce Comley French, a young attorney from Ohio, graduate of Antioch Law School, had attended American University, and he was always looking for, as most lawyers do, what is the legal precedent? Have you ever had this conversation with a lawyer? What is the legal precedent for this my item that you are citing here or asking for? Well, the legal precedent, Mr. French, is the President of the United States and all the lawyers who work for him, who signed off on this piece of legislation, including the Senate and the House of Representatives, who say that what we're proposing is constitutional and therefore legal. Right? Because if a lawyer can figure out how to knock it out, all apologies to lawyers in the room. I wanted to be a lawyer, but that's another story. All right, enough of that. So one of the greatest obstacles we faced, self-government. The lack of self-government meant that we had to deal with appointed officials, so we needed to time ourselves, and the action that Walter Washington, the ridiculous action that Walter Washington took, and trying to close down a small office inside the Department of Human Services. How much money could he have possibly had saved? In a budget of millions, how much money can you possibly save by eliminating four people? So if you're dealing with elected officials, then elected officials need your vote. They need your money to get elected. They need petitions signed. And although you may not be a citizen today, you can certainly hand out posters and you can put up bumper stickers. I don't know, and wear buttons, right? You don't have to be a citizen to do that. Home Rule Act of 1973 creates the first elected city council in 74. 75 of January 2nd is when you get the council to sit, and you saw the members of the council. Gus, can I get you to? So creating key alliances. Here are the takeaways we want you to have, because we think, Sonia and I think, that they are still applicable today, and we're hoping that if we share anything with you today, is the importance of you being involved in civic action.
Yes.
Reach out to the grassroots. You cannot represent your community unless you have community involvement.
Exactly.
Simple as that. It doesn't matter whether or not you like the person who's reaching out or not. Learn to trust one another and learn it's okay to disagree without insulting each other. Engage the church. If the ministers don't support you, either by not saying that you're bad, either by not saying anything or saying something, that's support. If they don't say anything and they're aware of your existence, that's still support. What you don't want is for the church, whether it be a minister or a priest, anywhere in the church organization, to say to the constituency, this is a bad group. What they're doing is wrong. Don't support the TSP extension, right? You don't want a minister saying that. You want the minister saying support. All right, so build coalitions, involve students, build a core of a working group core. A working group core is important because not everybody's going to participate all the time, and they'll drop out. Click, because they're telling me to hurry up. All right. Community leadership, lessons learned. Adult education is vital. Teach. If you teach, and you teach the teacher, and the teacher teaches, then you have civic involvement. This is something from my days of yesteryear. Power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, and it never will. So demand. Or as we used to say, pa'lante, siempre pa'lante. What was needed to pull this off? Civic education, be specific about what you ask for. Don't go in and say to the city council, Latinos need housing. So what? Everybody needs housing, right? Latino needs jobs. Everybody needs jobs. Be specific. We need affordable housing for the poor. We need affordable housing for the working, for the teachers, for the police officers, for the firefighters. We want them to stay here. And this is how you do it. Don't rely on a council member to figure it out for you. Come up with a solution. Even if you think it's too expensive, let them figure out where they get the money. So be specific and work together. And this is most important. Work together. If you work together, you'll succeed. Next. Recommendations for new generation, I think basically Sonia already said it. Mobilize, lead with advocacy, get the group to deliver a specific product. Pick something specific, right? Go for concrete, measurable benefits, address conflict without confrontation, and learn demonstration tactics. They are teachable tactics, and I think they got a book for you that's going to teach you all about it.
I want to end this by saying that the legislation, after many readings, the legislation passed unanimously. The day that the city council voted on it, our entire school, Centro Católico, Set Center, we were all there. It passed, but then, and then it went to Congress, and I think Hector followed it in Congress, because then Jose went to work for the Census Bureau, and I was really too busy with my school. Hector followed it in Congress. It was signed by the president, and then our dear mayor didn't want to establish the commission. It took him a long, long time, so because we had no meetings, no way of communicating una agencia con otra. We didn't even have cell phones or anything. So what we did is I came up with the idea of establishing a Council of Latino Agencies, which lasted for 20 years, and we would meet todos los directores de agencia would meet all the time, and we would come up with an agenda and everything, and we were supposed to close down the council when the commission was elected, but we were so successful and so political that we lasted 20 years, the Council of Latino Agencies, and then it disappeared. But that is the story of Hola, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Hector Rodriguez, and it is true what Sonia and Jose. Carlos gave you nicknames. You know what mine was? Negro. And every time Carlos wanted something written, he came to me a lot because I could read the language. And he'd say, Oye Negro, and I knew he was up to something. He needed something. And the first request he made in 1970, I'm one of those dreamers along with Sonia and Jose from the 70s. How many dreamers here from the 70s? All right. We started something and we fought for it. And I did a little research that I'm going to give to Sonia as part of the project, and I applaud them for the work that they have started, and Jackie for getting this started through the office. But yes, the work is not done yet. Your generation now has to pick up. You know, some of us fought a lot and hard battles, and we didn't have the power that you all have. But between the Office of Spanish Affairs, which we call the original office, and then Hola, we served the community, we empowered the community, and it was what? Us dreamers from 1970. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Rodriguez. Another question?
Nadie tiene pregunta.
This is a great opportunity. Can you state your name?
Angelique Sina.
Hi, my name is Raina Sharp, and thank you so much for sharing. I'm just curious if you paved the way for others' offices and if there were other cities that looked to you and what you did here as an example.
You want to answer, Jose?
Sure. The fact is that all politics is local, and so we basically gave the opportunity for others to see what we had done here, what we were able to achieve, and we were willing to share, and we did. Some cities opted, even though they had large Latino populations, like New York, for example, to have a liaison officer. Others opted not to do it. I mean, you can't make the change unless people at the local level get involved. We were fortunate that we were able to basically tap in to civil rights leaders that were elected, and we were able to tap into the resources at the local community to get it changed them. But in a nutshell, you know, we wanted to have other people do it. Later on, when I became director of personnel, I had Hola involved in the recruitment of police officers from other jurisdictions who wanted to be police officers in the District of Columbia. So we recruited Latino police officers for the first time in 1980, 81, firefighters, EMTs. I remember writing a rule in personnel to waive the technical requirement for Cuban doctors who had landed in Miami to basically be able to work as EMTs in the District of Columbia. So we shared all those experiences as personnel director. I shared it with my colleagues in the National Association of Personnel Officers, and it was my hope that they, would basically take up the initiative. But if you have people take the job just for the title, and that's why I don't really talk about a lot, in terms of titles. Titles in government come and go. If you just accept the title but not the opportunity, and that's what Jackie was talking about before. Is Jackie has accepted the opportunity, and the title empowers her to pursue that opportunity. And at the local level, you got to find that person who's looking for that.
Another question for Sonia and Jose? Can you please state your name before your question? Thank you.
My name is Luz Veros. I am Carlos Rosario student. I just have to say thank you for everything that you guys do for me, for the community, for everybody. And I had one of my daughters, I had tell my story. I came to this country with 2 suitcases and 2 girls. One of them is now the executive director of United We Dream, and she fight for the dreamers, and I hope that she has the pleasure to meet you guys and see all that you have done for the community.
Another question for Sonia and Jose? Sir.
It's a comment and also an announcement. I'm Jay Castaño. I've had the privilege of having Sonia and Jose and people at the school as my family in DC, because I'm from Cuba. I came 40 years ago, and I started working with Marcelo and Father Jose Somoza, and then I started working with Sonia. So I do want to thank you. Now, moving a little bit into the future, just 24 hours from now, gun control is a major, major goal, not only of the whole country, but especially in the Latino community too. And we have the privilege of living in the nation's capital. If you don't know where to go, the parish of St. Patrick, right here in Chinatown, we're meeting there with a lot of students. Jose mentioned that there is nothing done without the students and the young people. So tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, leaving out of St. Patrick's Parish, a few blocks from here, if you want to join us, please do. We need your help.
Okay.
Thank you. One last question.
Johnny Yataco from Washington Hispanic. Sonia and Jose, I think what you have done is amazing. I have a quick question. Why do you think we don't have more elected officials in the DC government? And also, do you think, will we ever see a Latino mayor in DC?
Well, I remember before Dave Clark was elected, that was, what year was that? Anyhow, I mean, so many years ago. But Carlos Rosario ran for the city council, and Jose was his campaign manager. But Carlos Rosario was fighting an uphill battle because he was running against Dave Clark. So Dave Clark won, and of course Rosario didn't win. Also, Hector Rodriguez has run 3 times for the city council. That in this city, we do not have enough Latinos and other minorities to support a Latino candidate. That is the major problem. That's the major problem. So until we have the votes, And you know, in other cities like New York and in Miami and all, they have Latinos, but they have votes. We don't have the votes. That's the problem. Yeah, we're working on it. At Carlos Rosario, we have a great citizenship program, and you can tell people to go there and register to become citizens. Until we have enough citizens to elect somebody, it's not going to happen.
Last question.
Jorge Rivas. I have been here 45 years in Washington, D.C., 55 in the United States, and also from? I am a native of Ecuador, so I wasn't part of the original group here. I wasn't from Puerto Rico. I wish I were. Or
Oh, that's okay.
or Cuba. Yeah, but the important thing here is that we not only have to be active politically in Washington, D.C., but also in the D.C. metro area. Yes. The pressure is mounting. In Maryland legislature, we now have 6 Latinos. One of them a senator. In Virginia, the last election, we elected 2. In Delaware, we just have a candidate we're supporting, Guillermina, forget her last name, I'm sorry. So little by little, we're gaining power. Yes. But we cannot be, I think your remark about being isolated, I think is very important. You have to build bridges across all communities and make yourself visible all the time. And participating in things that are not Latino. For instance, you'll be shocked to see, we support literacy councils all over the Mid-Atlantic region. We serve 6 states and the District of Columbia. If you call the Literacy Council in DC and said, can you give me information about how I can bring Latinos to learn, adult Latinos to learn English one-on-one, they say, we don't serve Latinos. It's only for blacks. God. That's today. You can dial that phone number and you'll hear it.
So they can call Carlos Rosario.
Yeah, that's right. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.